Hi, everybody. I'm Tracy Swedlow, and this is Televisionation. And I have someone special to introduce you to today. Not somebody who you have met before in the TV industry, but someone who is producing television, producing Broadway, producing films. And his name is Cody Lassen. Welcome to Televisionation, Cody.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Great to see you again.
You too. I'm actually, many of you know that I've been developing a musical called TV the Musical, and I see myself in the theater world and the TV world, obviously, which is where I spend most of my time. And I've worked in film as well, but I love the art of producing and creating stories for whatever screen they appear on. And Cody is a successful Broadway producer. He's also done television and film. So I wanted to invite him on here to discuss the challenges today from the producer's perspective of bringing a story to any of these uh, mediums. So Cody, the reason I know you is because I'm involved with a theater community called True, or Theater Resources Unlimited, and I'm grateful to Bob Ost for introducing us. So much is going on in your life. We can't obviously do it all right now, but tell me a little bit about, and let me preface this by saying that you have two production companies, right? Cody Lassen and Associates. That's for Broadway, for stage, and then also Alder Street Productions, which I believe is your media oriented
Exactly.
production.
Yeah. We do, I'm a firm believer in storytelling is storytelling, and whether the venue is film or TV or the stage, it's about finding the right platform to tell the right story on.
Well, that's my first question is, why producing? What was the film, TV show, Broadway play, or something, or person who changed your life, impacted your life, and made you feel, I need to produce. I want to tell stories.
Why producing? Because we're all a little off our rocker. Otherwise, none of us would get into this. I think we could all probably make more money and have better hours than just about any other career. But I first got interested when I saw Cats when I was probably 6 or 7 years old on tour in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and fell in love with theater and with storytelling, and have been doing it more or less ever since.
And did you really know what a producer was at that
No,
age?
I mean, and I think one of the issues is we don't. I was going to say we don't do a good job at telling people what a producer is, and I think it's also because every producer does the job a little bit differently. And a producer, in film and TV and theater are all kind of doing the same thing, but a little differently, and our titles are a little different. And I think it's one of the best and worst things about being a producer is unlike if you want to be an actor or a director or a writer, there's a pretty clear career path, right? You study the craft, you go to probably go to a college program and get a degree in that craft. You probably do some sort of mentor-mentee relationship, internship, and kind of work your way up. On the producing side, there's none of that, or not nearly to the scale and organizational wherewithal as those other positions. So you kind of have to forge your own path. And on the one sense, I think that's great because literally anyone can be a producer. On the other side, it's kind of terrible because if you want to be a director, go to Amazon right now. There's literally hundreds of books about how you become a director. I think there's 4 books about producing, and the kind of the most in-depth one was last printed in the late 80s. So, just not the resources out there to kind of tell you how to do this.
Sounds to me like there's an opening for you.
I don't want to write the book, but I will support someone who writes it, and I will be the first to buy it.
Well, but were you not attracted to being a director, or an
No,
actor at any time? No?
not at all. I've never done it, never wanted to do it, never studied it. I have great respect for the people who do, but I'm firmly wearing the producer hat, which is a creative hat, right? There's giving notes, there's giving feedback, there's helping guide the art side of the business. But no, I've never been interested on being on stage or on camera.
And being a producer to some extent is like bringing a baby into the world, right? I mean, do you feel like you are producing something and that you're the responsible one to bring this story to the world, or is it the writer, because the writer feels that they're doing that? Like, how do you share that responsibility of producing this thing, from nothing to something? How does that feel
Yeah.
personally?
I mean, I think the big difference there between the film and TV side and the theater side is that, and I'm very much over generalizing and simplifying here, but more often than not on the film and TV side, the writer, that's work for hire, right? They're writing a script, they kind of pass it off to the producer, who takes it on from there. Where on the theater side, the author is the one who owns the underlying intellectual property and is more or less leasing it to the producer rather than the producer purchasing it. So my role is a little different on both sides of that fence. But at the end of the day, I think I'm more of a doula, helping guide the birth than the mother giving birth to the show. I firmly believe a producer's job is to remove roadblocks so that the writer and the director and the cast and everyone else can do their best job to tell the story.
I love that metaphor of a doula. I think that's wonderful.
And just like a doula, part of it is very beautiful, part of it is gross, part of it is stressful. It runs the gamut.
You're like the on-ramp into something successful. Okay.
Exactly, that's the hope.
Now, I think another important skill of a producer is recognizing when a production or a piece of writing or a pitch or anything that, however it comes to you, in whatever medium you want to be involved in it at a given time, has promise. And so when you hear a score or you read a script or you hear a pitch, what's the one thing that you're looking for, or does something have to stand out? Is it the people involved? Like, what says to you, oh, that's it, that project's for me, I want to make that happen?
I mean, there's
What's
probably
that like?
two steps to that answer. I think the first answer is how I'm pitched, because I think a writer pitching their idea is equally as important as the idea itself, right? If your initial email or phone call or meeting with me doesn't get me excited, I'm probably not going to get to the point where I say, send me the script so I can read it. So in that initial pitch, I'm really looking for an idea that I connect with. And that can be a profoundly moving, serious idea. That can be a light, fluffy, silly idea, but something I feel an emotional connection to. I have to, because I'm in the world of for-profit theater and film, I have to think there's enough people in the world who will pay to buy a ticket to this thing. Occasionally I'll read something and say, this is amazing, this is incredible, this needs to exist in the world, bring it to a nonprofit theater. There's not enough people in the world, I don't think, who will buy tickets to this. And if those two boxes are checked, I will consider it. Certainly the writer's track record is something that's a big part of that, but I've worked with first-time writers that had no track record. But for better or for worse, in most industries and in life, if you have a track record of your projects getting produced and being well received and finding an audience, that certainly gets my attention. And I'm looking for passion in the writer, right? I want a writer who there's a story burning inside of them that they need to get out. I'm not the type of producer to option a piece of intellectual property or come up with an idea and then kind of shop it around and hire a writer. I want the writer to come to me and say, this is something that I need to tell.
So do you move in the world of television and film and theater and will hear anything? Or, because I know, for example, you're behind a film called Actual Nobodies, starring Didi Cohn, who is the famous, girl with the curlers in her hair from Greece.
Frenchie in Greece.
Yes, yes. But you've involved in various projects that are not theater related. You have won. You were Emmy nominated for a series called Indoor Boys, a TV series. So, I mean, do you walk in those spaces still, or are you just really getting Broadway pitches?
Yeah, I mean, probably 70% of what we do is theater. That's my first love. I love on the theater side how we get all these chances to get it right. We have readings and workshops and out-of-town tryouts and previews, and you get to test and adjust for a period of years before you're out there in the public. On the flip side, on the theater side, I'm relying on there's only 41 Broadway theaters owned by 3 privately held companies. It's literally a real estate game. I could have the best show in the world, but I've got to convince someone to let me use their real estate. Where on the film side, if I can raise the money, I can make a film. I don't have to wait for someone else to say yes. But getting into film was really kind of a COVID pivot for us. When for 18 months we couldn't make theater, I thought, well, here's a way to employ people and tell stories that is, still writers and directors and actors. Everything's just done a little differently. And so now we do about 30% film projects. And I did work on that web series a while back, very much open to television. I think that's just another world where I don't know nearly as much in the TV space as I do in the theater or film spaces. So open to doing more TV, but really right now we're focused on mostly on theater and film projects.
Well, what does a theater producer know that TV producers don't understand? What could you teach?
Oh, I mean, I think the big difference is in our world, it's all organized labor, right? On Broadway, we have 19 unions and guilds, and there is, I can't work non-union. I'm a signatory to all these agreements, and I'm a very pro-union producer, by the way. But just on the film and TV side, there's a whole range of, small, scrappy non-union projects to big budgeted union projects and everything in between. So I think on the theater side, we just have a lot more rules and regulations, and even our distribution is fairly rigid and dictated to us, right? You do 8 shows a week. We can't do more or less with rare exceptions. Our curtain times are more or less industry standard. So there's good and bad to that, but I'd say there's probably a lot more structure on the theater side.
Do you think if you had the analytics that Netflix has access to, which of course nobody has access to because it's a walled garden, and I know you love data, do you think if you had that kind of understanding of individual viewers, because that's what TV industry is about, it's measurement, tracking, addressable advertising, really understanding the demographics, if you had that kind of rich first party or even zero party data, how would that change your life as a Broadway producer?
Yeah, I mean that would be incredible. We're pretty open with our data in terms of we voluntarily publish every Tuesday the grosses down to every single show level. So while we certainly the studios put out press releases when their big blockbusters hit certain milestones, we report them every Tuesday. And we also, all of our budgets are public information. Anybody with an internet connection can look up the budget to a show. So on that side, we're very transparent. On the flip side, kind of like Netflix, I don't get to learn a lot about my ticket buyers on Broadway. The theater owner, who also owns the ticketing system, they own that relationship. I don't get the names or email addresses or info on my ticket buyers other than very high level demographic information. But I imagine that's very similar to selling a TV show to Netflix, right? You're going to get some very top level information on your viewership, but they're not going to really share much deeper than that. But yeah, I would love to, really develop relationships with our audience members over the course of many shows and many years. But B, get to know who are they better? Why did they choose the show? Why did they choose our show over another show? When we're doing out of town tryouts, we get a lot of that data. We're doing audience surveys and focus groups. But once we get to the commercial stage in New York, that relationship kind of goes away. And now those audience members, their relationship is really with the theater owner. They probably don't understand that if you go onto a website and buy a ticket, but that's who owns that relationship, which I don't love.
Have you ever considered offering a membership, a subscription, something beyond Broadway?
I think that would be so tough to do because a Broadway show, you don't know how long it will run. You don't know if this will spawn other things. So I think that would be a tough thing to sell because you'd be saying, sign up for this subscription, but our show may close next week and your subscription will be worthless. So really subscriptions kind of live in the nonprofit model where they're planning a year or two of a season in advance.
But you might have other shows. You might have a newsletter. You might have a way to communicate after the show about other shows. I don't know. I think in terms of building community, because that's what I want to hear. But
the problem is I don't have people's email addresses. So if I wanted to sell a subscription, really the only way I could do that is put a QR code in the playbill or on a poster in the lobby. And, I would imagine it's going to be a very, very small fraction of people who would scan the QR code, let alone give me their email address. But I would certainly, love to have those relationships with audience members.
Well, let's talk about audiences for a second, because that's really trying to figure out what your audience wants is the name of the game, right? So whether it's on screen, on stage, on film, for example, who knew that, the Odyssey would all of a sudden hit it so big? Who knew? But what is the consistent thing that you're recognizing when you produce, whether on stage or film or wherever, that audiences are looking for right now? Is it, as Robert Altman used to say, heart, sex, violence, adventure, all of these things? Or is it something else? Is it good music? Could they just go to a show with just fantastic music, but the plot sucks? I mean, what's the consistent thing that you're finding these days that people are hungering for?
I think if I had the answer to that question, I would be doing this interview from my yacht off the coast of some fabulous country in the Mediterranean. I think that's the thing you can't really predict. The number of times I'm pitched something that says, this is the next Hamilton, or this is the next, whatever's hot in the moment. It's like, well, that's too late. There's already been a Hamilton. And usually our kind of breakthrough hits on stage or on screen are things that are very much unlike anything that's been a hit before them. So I think you have to just kind of believe in the show and support it and give it the best chance possible, rather than try to figure out the formula and figure out like, oh, if I check these 4 boxes, then I'm going to be the same as this other show and I'll be a hit. That being said, we always try to make a show a hit, but I think you kind of have to do things on your own path and trust that, Chorus Line didn't think they were going to be a big thing. Imagine being pitched that idea. I'm going to interview a bunch of dancers and we're going to have hours of audio tapes and turn it into a musical. Or, I've got this biography on this, politician in America's history that you probably didn't even really learn much about in school, and I want to have a hip hop, score to go along with it. So I think our mega hits are kind of really hard to predict in advance.
Well, as we've already established here, and everyone knows, Broadway is very expensive. So, as a producer, what's more? I'm reading my question. What's more exciting, having an expensive, great show that sells moderately, but builds over time, so you don't know, or an inexpensive show, or an affordable show that's okay artistically, but hits audiences with a timely message that captures the zeitgeist for a session, and it sells really big, but then the audience disappears? What's more expensive, or what's the kind of, what's better for you as a producer?
I mean, I don't really get to choose. That's kind of the universe telling us which path it's going to go down. But the tough thing in theater is we really don't have time to build an audience. We don't have the runway that other businesses might have, right? A big Broadway musical, your weekly expenses are nearing $1 million a week. So certainly, Broadway shows have a contingency in their budget, because most shows don't start strong. Most shows have to build the audience. But it's the rare Broadway show that is given, 3, 6, 9, 12 months to build that audience. Generally, you're talking about weeks and months. And if you don't kind of build your base audience by then, the writing is on the wall that you may never. But there are rare exceptions. Maybe Happy Ending is a show that opened a couple years ago that its first year, it very much struggled at the box office. It was very well received critically. Audiences loved it, but they just weren't finding an audience. And that's one of the rare examples that they held on for almost a year of, some shaky finances, but then ended up finding their audience. And 2 years later, it's still running. So it does happen on occasion, but for the most part, 6, 8 weeks into the run of a show, you more or less kind of know how it's going to end. Either a happy ending, a sad ending, or more often than not, something kind of in between.
Do you ever know when, even though something might have fantastic artistic value, that it's just not cutting it financially? Do you persist, or do you throw in the towel? Like,
yeah, I wouldn't quite use the word throw in the towel, because that almost sounds like giving up and walking away. But listen, you see the writing on the wall. At some point, most shows that aren't selling well, you're seeing your advanced sales or lack of advanced sales. And my personal opinion, that I know some colleagues don't agree with, is 99.9% of the time that doesn't turn around. right? Maybe happy ending was the outlier. So I'm a big believer in that if a show is just hemorrhaging money and there doesn't seem to be a path to getting, you know, audiences to come at the level that we need them to, that it's almost always better to close a show on your own terms, return to the investors any money that's left, rather than, you know, just blindly hope, oh gosh, if we've got enough money to last 3 or 4 weeks, we might as well run through all the money and see if things turn around. I think there's something to be said for ending things on your own terms and announcing a closing far enough in advance that hopefully your last few weeks are selling pretty well.
If you were to look at the shows you're doing now or in the future, and thinking, you know, is this a Broadway property only? Is this an entertainment, you know, platform? Could I bring this to a connected TV, you know, a smart TV environment, or onto YouTube in clips? Or, you know, are you thinking multi-platform right now? Is that part of your overall, you know, planning?
I mean, not really, for a couple of reasons. First, our good friends at the talent agencies, you know, they're going to require an option fee for each medium you want to exploit a property in. So my dream would be to get an overall option on an idea or a script, and then give me some time to decide, is this a stage play? Is this a movie? Is this a TV series? Is this a podcast? Is this a graphic novel? Now, the agents, of course, want an option for each of those. And I think the tough thing on the theater side is the timing, right? I would love to do something that maybe exists on stage, and then maybe you learn more about these characters in a TV series and they have storylines that kind of branch out from the stage show. But the problem is, theater has such a long timeline and the horizon is so far in the distance that I think trying to line that up where you could get distribution for a TV show to line up precisely with when the stage show is running it's like winning the lottery. Someone has to win the lottery. It doesn't hurt to play as long as you can afford it, but you probably shouldn't have your business plan be dependent on winning the lottery.
Back to connected TV for a second. There have been some experiments, well, in broadcast television with musicals, of course, NBC. You worked at NBC.
I did, yeah.
And what did you do at NBC, by the way? I forget.
I was at NBC Universal doing market research, consumer insights, but everything minus film. So theme parks, shows with living, breathing people. But then after I was at NBC Universal, I worked at Nielsen for a short time, which at the time owned NRG, and we did research for lots of movies, TV shows, pretty much everything that aired on TV or was on a movie screen at that time. NRG was kind of the go-to research company.
Did you learn anything about this sort of measurement business, the tracking and measurement business that is
Yeah,
informing
I mean,
you today?
I brought that into every project we do. It's kind of mind-boggling that on the film and TV side, you do market research and test screenings on almost everything from low budget to huge blockbusters. And on the theater side, we were really doing none of that. And that's not to say I want to, you know, poll the general public and create a show for the lowest common denominator at all, but it's things like testing a title, right? That's the most important piece of marketing for any film or theater project. The first thing usually people are going to see is literally just the name of the title and text. And is that intriguing? Does it get people to say, I want to learn more, and eventually I want to buy tickets? During previews, we do surveys of every audience member every night. We do focus groups, because at the end of the day, I'm not making the show for me. If I only had to sell one ticket to me every night, great, I can do that. But at the end of the day, I'm much more interested in what do 1,000 strangers think every night, even more so than my colleagues, because my colleagues are really, you know, embedded. They have a different opinion. Also, they're not going to be totally honest with me. And I'm guilty of this. If somebody asks me for feedback on their show and I really didn't like it, I'm going to give them some constructive criticism, but I'm going to couch it in kindness. But if I'm filling out an anonymous online survey, I'm going to be really brutally honest with them. And, you know, not every survey comes back with great data. And often people, you know, suggest a fix, and the suggestion is almost always terrible. But we try to see through that and try to get to, well, okay, there's clearly something here they're not understanding or they're confused by, and how do we address that and maybe ignore their solutions?
one of the things that is very much a part of television culture, of course, is advertising. And you don't really have that in the theater,
Yeah,
obviously. However, I was going to Northwestern many years ago in Chicago, and this was when the oh god, what's the name of their theater company? Anyway, they were doing the Brady Bunch. This is before the movie. This is when the Brady Bunch was on stage. It was a huge hit, absolutely huge. People are lining up around the block, but they had commercial interruptions, just like the TV show. And
nice.
they were as entertaining. And also, they were sponsored by local companies, but they were just as theatrical, just as entertaining, and just as strange as the Brady Bunch content itself. Because it on stage, the Brady Bunch content took on a little bit of a sexual innuendo that you weren't expecting when you saw it on television. Anyway, what do you think about advertising? I know sponsorship, of course, is in the program, but would that break theater? Is that something that the theater needs to do in order to subsidize, because it's so expensive, puts so much pressure on you? What do you think about that?
I mean, I think the problem is that brands don't seem to be interested, and the main reason there is Broadway theaters are small. Most of them are under 1,000 seats, and so when we go out to like a United Airlines or a Coca-Cola, that's not valuable to them, right? They say, look, if I do a TV commercial, I'm getting in front of millions. When I do, online ads, I'm getting in front of billions. 800 people a night is kind of not worth their time. So usually the best we can get is, in exchange for putting them on the step and repeat on opening night and including them in our press releases around opening night, they might give us some in-kind services. An airline might provide, the airfare we need. A hotel chain might provide the rooms, that we need. And listen, something in kind is money I don't need to spend in the budget. So it's almost as good as cash. But the feedback I've gotten from corporate marketing departments is there's just not enough eyeballs for us to make it worth our while to spend money there.
Well, if can a Broadway producer bring something to a connected TV environment that Apple or Netflix isn't capable of doing? Is this something you have ever pitched to the television industry?
No,
Moving
because
away from advertising, is there something that you could bring that they can't possibly do?
the costs there are so prohibitive to film anything in a Broadway theater, that could it be done? Yes. Would it make financial sense? Almost certainly not. And that's why you see almost every live capture, whether it's the Hadestown live capture that's doing a limited run in theaters right now, or something that went to streaming only. Almost all of those were filmed in Europe, just because the financial and other restrictions in New York it just doesn't work. So I would love to do that, but in our current ecosystem, that's a very difficult thing to do.
I have so many more questions. I appreciate your time here, by the
Of
way.
course, happy to be
Uh,
on.
have you ever made a decision? What decision did you make for a particular show that you were scared to make, and you made it, and it turned out really, really well? And then also follow that up with what decisions did you make that shocked you and completely, sent things, in the wrong direction? Like, because everything you do requires making that decision at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big one was, we had a play with music on Broadway called Indecent. That was one of those shows that, was doing mildly well, but we saw the writing on the wall and we thought, well, our grosses are dipping down every week. And at some point, we're going to get to the point where we're losing money every week instead of breaking even. And we thought, as I explained earlier, let's close on our terms, right? Let's close while we have some cash in the bank that we can distribute to our investors, and we can kind of own this and announce a closing, a couple months in advance rather than a couple weeks in advance. And the sales turned around so drastically that we ended up extending the show and staying open for quite a bit longer. So again, another truly an outlier case, like maybe happy ending, that's not something you should really plan for. But we made what we thought was the best business decision, is to end things early and own that process, and that ended up generating, I think, a lot of goodwill with our existing audience members who had already seen the show. I think we were probably on the list of shows to see for a lot of other people, and once they saw we were closing and we had given them enough runway to actually plan and buy tickets to see it, and listen, it didn't change the fortunes drastically. We made a little extra money. We still ended up closing. But that was I think we made the brave and bold and right decision to close early, but that brave and bold decision ended up, putting more cash in the bank.
And well, we don't necessarily have to do the other question. We're running out of time here. We're beyond the 30 minutes. So I also, of course, know that you're very interested in new technology, although the theater world is very cautious about what to do with AI. And I know perhaps you embrace a lot of tools out there. So curious if you're interested in what happens with Gen AI storytelling. Can it integrate with live theater? Gen AI is a form of television. The television world has issues with Gen AI. What's your feeling about what, the TV of tomorrow? Is that going to be part of stage storytelling at any point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to live in a world where AI is writing scripts and creating things that really aren't new, right? AI is taking things that exist and synthesizing that, and humans are the ones who come up with wholly new original ideas. That being said, AI is a part of our daily workflow now. I think on the business side, there's so many use cases. One of them is after we build a budget for a show, whether it's film, TV, or theater, one of the things someone in my office has to do is very painstakingly go through every line item, find the union agreements that might be involved in that line item, make sure the rates are current, the rules are current. That's something that would take several days for someone to literally just go through a budget and then go through literally thousands of pages of PDFs to make sure we are following the rules and budgeting appropriately. That can now be done in 30 seconds. It's not taking a person's job away. That means someone in my office can do something a little more interesting and fulfilling rather than, comparing PDFs. Is there a way to use AI to kind of personalize portions of shows or do something at scale that, again, you just couldn't do otherwise? I think that's intriguing to me. But I still want humans to be in the driver's seat in terms of coming up with the story and telling the story. But I think there's so many use cases for AI. Another one, I just experienced a musical in Seoul, South Korea. I don't speak Korean, shocking, I know. And so this musical was in Korean, and I was given glasses that superimpose subtitles under each actor on stage. And it used AI and connected to the soundboard. So in real time, it made sure the subtitles were down to the syllable in my glasses as they were coming out of someone's mouth. Even if on a given night, someone flubbed a line or there was a tech snafu and a line was delivered 30 seconds later, it made sure I was seeing captions that precisely matched what was happening on stage. And I think that's a brilliant use of AI.
Well, it's almost a kind of immersion a little bit, right? And I know there's a lot of interest in immersion. The Sphere is doing very well, even though that's a screened experience. But have you taken an interest in creating more of a four-dimensional immersive experience using multimedia? What are your thoughts about that type of theater?
Yeah, I mean, as an audience member, I love it. Right, Masquerade that we have running in New York, a kind of reinvented, fully immersive Phantom of the Opera, brilliant. The problem there is the expense and the logistics on our side of pulling something off like that. So we haven't really dipped our toe in that pool, only because it's a little above my pay grade. But other people are doing that, and I'm supportive of it, and I hope we get involved in one of those projects someday. And again, there's a lot of logistical reasons that make it difficult, but my dream would be to have a story that exists in all these different mediums. You see the stage play, and then there's a TV series that follows another storyline, and then maybe there's a podcast that goes into another character's backstory, and then maybe there's a movie that has this. Why can't we have our own cinematic universe, even if we're not based on Marvel characters? I think that would be incredible.
Okay, well, I'm going to say that's it then. Thank you so much, Cody. I have more questions, but that's a great way to end this. I think that would be an exciting challenge to go forward. You might want to check out a fantastic creator named Bernie Sue, who has won Emmy Awards, and he has done projects on film, on stage, and carried them into like Twitter and interactive, chat films. And another time, another day, maybe we'll be able to introduce you to him.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise, and for keeping the lights on.
Thanks for having me on. It was great to talk.
Thank you. Cody Lassen is the owner of Cody Lassen and Associates, and you can find him, I believe it's codylassen.com.
Exactly.
And thank you so much. I'm Tracy Swedlow. This is Televisionation, but television can exist in all types of environments. So thanks again, everybody. Next time. Cut. Okay, cut.